All right, let's continue to talk about the impact of the rolling blackouts on businesses now. We're joined by the president of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Adv Mtho Xulu. Thank you for being with us, Advocate. Obviously, stage 6, that impact is devastating, but some analysts are saying, well, businesses have put contingency plans in place, at least those that can afford it. Would you say the impact is slightly muted this time around because of that, or is that cold comfort?
Good evening, Francis. Good evening to the viewers. It's cold comfort, and I think it's totally misplaced for us to even get to a point where we feel like business can afford it, because we're simply shifting the blame. Business cannot afford a failing Eskom. Business cannot afford any level of stage 6, let alone, rolling stage 6, which even, no one seems to know when it will end. Down to stage 5 now, but still, we have a big problem. And what we have in business is that not everyone can afford an alternative solution. We have a majority of small businesses in this economy, and many of them are really trying to survive. So it's really disrespectful to business to say that they can go on with it because they can afford an alternative. We do need an Eskom, and it should not be an extra burden on business to generate its own energy. It should be a choice to go alternatives and not necessarily forced like we are being now.
All right, so how do you solve a problem like Eskom? The president announced a great plan in July. There was a caveat that it would take time. But have you been following the promises that were made in July and the implementation thereof? For example, cutting red tape, getting the skills on board. Maybe you can comment about the debate, whether Eskom should be able to get the personnel it needs, or whether we still need to look at transformation in that process, as Nomsa is saying.
Yeah, look, I'll start by saying transformation is at the center of our economy. I think all peace-loving South Africans appreciate that transformation is part of this economy. But what I think we need is that we need to appreciate that Eskom is in deep trouble. Any messaging that's coming out of government and the Eskom leadership now does not actually measure up to the devastation that the crisis is causing and the damage is causing on the economy. So I think what we need to appreciate now is that we should all accept that none of the plans and none of the sentiments coming from those responsible are yielding any results. And therefore, we need to come up with drastic measures on how we can turn around Eskom. We all appreciate that it's going to take long and it will take some time, but at least we need to have a sense that we are making progress. Stage 6 first became a reality in 2019, and at that time we had the shock of our life. But this year already is the second time around. So it's simply meaning that stage 6 is becoming a norm. And what we are calling for now is that we need to have a different way of how we deal with Eskom and how we deal with the partnership with the private sector, which means that the current governance and the current arrangement and the oversight of Eskom now needs to change. And, we want to have that kind of discussion, because none of the plans, none of the forms, and none of the solutions that they come across are making any plan. The president's plan alone is long-term in nature, and the various task teams that are involved are unaccountable. We know that there's a great divide between management and the staff at Eskom. So nothing that is in place now is going to make a difference at Eskom. And we need to discuss now as a country how different are we going to run this company.
Well, do you have any suggestions? So, there are calls for more transparency from the ministerial committee looking at this, from Eskom itself. The CEO of Eskom, looking back, didn't know that load shedding would be as bad as it became under his tenure. So it seems like even the executive at the top of this very complex organization cannot understand it immediately. How do we as the public try and figure this all out?
We need to probably find a way of taking Eskom out of the clutches of the current governance and management systems. And what I mean by that, I'm saying that we probably need to have it being managed independently out of the department as it is now. We need to make sure that we create greater transparency, meaning that the political head should not block and filter the communication coming out of the management of Eskom. We need to understand in more granular details who is responsible for what at Eskom, because I think it's very troubling if the CEO says, I didn't know that it was going to be this worse. We have management and power station managers who've been there longer than him. If a matter is happening in a power station, why can't we get that level of visibility? So the Eskom did not start when Andre de Rede joined Eskom, where there have been people who've been there longer, and we should not shift the blame. So we will want to have a discussion to say, let us move it out of the clutches of the current structure. Let us challenge parliamentarians to speed up any laws that will allow us to have Eskom being a transparently managed business. Let us, if we are insisting on task teams and stakeholder involvement, let's have a multi-body group overseeing Eskom, so that it's not just a group of politicians that are overseeing the running of Eskom, but we have greater transparency. And that's what we're calling for. The current system is not going to work. No amount of meetings by cabinet and the likes are going to help us now, because that's exactly what we've been doing for a decade. Let's give a discussion of what has happened in the past 5 years. All our solutions have come to naught, and things are getting worse. So we will need to challenge parliamentarians on how we can shift the laws to allow for transparency. If we want to have an oversight, that be multidisciplinary oversight that is independent with equal voting rights to be able to oversee this. But also let us go down and understand who is responsible for the day-to-day breakages. We talk now simply about the top 6 power stations being problematic, but all those assets belong to us. Why can't we go to the details to say who is responsible for what causes this, and why are they recurring, and what solutions can we bring in? And that's where we can bring the professionals to give us those details. But the current structures and the kind of solutions we are bringing now are not going to help, and business is at its lowest confidence with the current situation at Eskom.
And what about the plan that is even bigger than Eskom, which is to get more watts on the grid? If you look at it, since 2018, in fact, a few watts have been added to the grid. We were meant to harness the private sector. And then the president announced in July that bid window 6 for renewable energy, the independent power producers, would be doubled. So that sounded great. But now the minister is talking about bid window 5 having to be reopened, and the government confirming that in fact, none of the projects from bid window 5, last year's bid window, have even got financing because of the war in Ukraine, because the costs have gotten out of hand. Is that alarming to you, that not one of these can even get the financing to go ahead?
Well, certainly it's extremely concerning, and we understand. Running any mega infrastructure project will have a lot of challenges. Finance alone is international. So yes, something unexpected like the war will have an impact on the fundraising. But I think what we want to have maybe as a country is to agree what is the future of energy generation, what timeframes are we setting, and what support are we giving to those who want to come in. Because we do have the undertakings that red tape will be cut. The office on the red tape itself is not properly set up. We've never had Mr. Nkosi come out publicly to tell us what he's doing around red tape. A number of the interventions that the president talks about requires a lot of cooperation from the ministries. But you've never really had the ministers coming out in unison saying, I'm talking to my colleague, we are speeding up these matters. All the ministers work with caucuses in parliament. You've never had everyone who's responsible in the value chain saying, we are really going to, in a deliberate manner, free up private generation. So the problem is that some of these things are stuck because there's a lot of backdoor challenges to the opportunities. So what is beyond our control, there's nothing much you can do about it. But the thing is that opening up a bid window is not enough. Doubling the capacity of bid windows is not enough, unless if we are deliberate and consistent in how we are going to cut the red tape, increase private generation, and appreciate that the future of this country is going to be private generation, side by side with Eskom. Because initially we felt that private generation must be complementary to Eskom, but by the day it seems like we're going to have private generation having to coexist with Eskom, and we're going to have new conversations about the future of the energy in this country. And as I say to you, the current systems and the current structures are not going to have the solution. So we have to have a new way of how we run this company.
All right. So just calling for a bigger response to the magnitude, to face the magnitude of this crisis. That was SACCI's president, Adv Mtho Xulu.